And welcome to In the Word Wednesday. I'm Pastor Ron Bupp here at Heritage United Methodist Church in Waverly, Iowa. Welcoming you to In the Word Wednesday. The scripture that I've chosen for this morning comes from the book of James. James was the brother of Jesus. And in chapter 2, reading from verses 15 through 17, James writes this: Suppose a brother or a sister is without clothes or daily food. If one of you says to them, "Go in peace, keep warm and well fed," but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. This is kind of a tricky passage, but it's important to understand exactly what James is telling us. And as we consider it this morning, I want us to think about this passage in two separate ways. First, we need to understand that James stipulates that faith precedes good deeds. In other words, it is our love of God and His direction that leads us to works, to good works. However, many Christians today, not just in America, but around the world, believe that doing lots of good works, doing good deeds, will lead to their salvation. Well, put as bluntly as I possibly can, this is wrong thinking. Salvation comes to us by God's grace, not through good works. James tells us our belief, our faith, calls us to good works. This was settled 500 years ago when a Catholic priest named Martin Luther challenged the teachings of the church. You see, the church for a long time had inferred to people that they were saved by their good works. Well, Luther said, no, the scriptures are very clear. He said, no, sola gratia, which is Latin for saved by grace alone. That challenge by Martin Luther was called the Protestant Reformation and changed the face of the church for all time. The second thing that I want to talk to you about for us to consider is something more recent, more immediate. A little over a week ago, several Iowa communities experienced hurricane-force storms, some of them experiencing wind speeds in excess of 112 miles per hour. Just south of here, the community of Cedar Rapids and the surrounding suburbs and towns was one of these communities. They experienced total devastation. The entire city and these surrounding areas I talked about experienced catastrophic destruction. Well, days passed, and there was no voice, no activity by the community leaders. The mayor, you see, waited to ask the governor for help, and the governor waited to ask the federal government for help. Law, policy requires that the governor had to wait for a formal request from the mayor, and the president had to wait for a formal request from the governor. Each level was required to wait. Well, almost a week went by. Tons of food spoiled from people's refrigerators and from supermarkets, all having to be destroyed. There was no communication, there was no food, and there was no shelter for people who were displaced when their homes were destroyed. The only thing that was moving was people trying to clean up and isolated bands of good Samaritans who took it upon themselves to go out and help others by providing food and water and help cleaning up. Now, I'm not here to cast blame. In a very short while, you can imagine that there'll be plenty of finger pointing going on. But I am here to say that as Christians, we are charged by Jesus Christ's gospel not to wait. Jesus tells us in Matthew 25 that we are to feed the hungry when we find them. We are to give a drink to those who are thirsty. We are to clothe and shelter the needy when they need it. Faith that is absent deeds, James tells us, is dead faith. Now, Waverly is a little over an hour drive, some 70 miles north of Cedar Rapids. And by God's grace, we were spared this destruction and this devastation. But Heritage United Methodist Church is assisting a sister Methodist church down in the community of Marion. Christ Community Church is a United Methodist church. It was devastated by the storm. The pastor tells me that they are going to have to vacate their building for at least a year. This church has a special place in my heart because when we moved to Iowa, it was the one that we attended, and it was the one that sent me into ministry. So I'm asking, putting out a plea for help, for your good work in faith, to help this church in their lengthy rebuilding process. You can send donations here to Heritage United Methodist Church at Post Office Box 234, Waverly, Iowa, 50677. That's Heritage UMC, Post Office Box 234, Waverly, Iowa, 50677. And if you write a check, just mark in the memo, CCC, Christ Community Church. We'll collect the money and I will hand deliver it to Pastor Becky High down in Marion in just a short while so they can begin the road to recovery as we are charged by Matthew 25 and Jesus Christ himself to help those in need. Well, for today, I'm Pastor Ron Bupp saying thanks for joining me. And may the Lord bless you and keep you and your family safe and healthy during this time. Goodbye for now.